Hello and welcome to All Things Apostolic. My name is Kasey Sees.
And I'm Brian Williams.
And today we're going to talk about
Summit, music, and your favorite home missions pastor.
Tune in. Hello and welcome to All Things Apostolic. I am joined today with your favorite home missions pastor, Brother Brian Williams. We just got back from Summit Conference in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and we had a great time. Brother Williams, tell us about some of the stuff that were highlights for you at Pigeon Forge.
Well, this is the first time that I've been there as a home missions pastor, so we just did an unusual thing of buying a booth space. I don't know if anybody had done that before. So
I don't think so.
Maybe. Most of the time people do foreign missions or global missions. They all have their space. But I was in there with the people selling suits and clothes and knives and pens and seasoning. With all of that, there was a guy in the middle there advocating for the Rock Church of the Sierra. So that was an interesting thing. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I mean, you're kind of, there's no rule book on how to do that. There's no one that you kind of model after. You just kind of do it. So I have a lot of cool ideas, I think, for next year. I want to do it again next year. But I was there advocating for the church, pushing awareness for what the Rock Church Sierra is. A lot of people don't even know what it is that we are, what we're doing, why we're there, and just kind of put a human face to all that. And then I was also there selling my courses and things that I've done over the years. Then I was using those to fund some of the things that some projects that we're doing. So we had fun. I had fun doing it. Somebody called and told me that they thought that I was having the most fun of anyone at Summit, and legitimately I had fun. Now, I also know that it was crazy. I know that a lot of people laughed at it. I know that some people, and there was a little bit of, whatever. Anytime you're doing something new like that and it's unusual or people are not used to it, you're going to get looks and all that kind of stuff. So I was aware of all that. I understand that it was unconventional, but I kind of just embraced it and had a good time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think one of the more fun or funnest, if that's even a word we're allowed to use, that I seen at Summit was, most people probably don't know, but I got to see the back end side of it all.
That's right.
So we'd go in the first night, and I'm manning the Wilson University booth with Brother Josiah Aston, and then you've got your booth in the back. And at the university booth, it's pretty scripted, right? Hey, here's our program offerings. Here's what we're doing. Get some names, get some signups, and so that's pretty solid. It's hey, here's what you're doing. But it was fun watching you come back to the room and say, okay, this worked, this didn't work,
right?
And so I've got to find something new to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so I would probably agree with the assessment from whoever called you and said you probably had the most fun there. If you didn't, I was probably a close second, because it was such a fun time. I did not expect to have that much time at Summit, and it really got me thinking. Like I think I watched 10 or 15 of your clips, probably more than that, in terms of your favorite home missionary, and how you just brought everything back to that. And what really came to my mind as I was watching that, I was like, even if you're not somebody's favorite home missionary, you're probably their favorite home missionary's favorite home missionary.
That's right.
And so it came to my mind.
And that just kind of came up. I did not, that kind of emerged as we were going. Now, some people will think that that's being arrogant. Really, you got to understand my heart. I was just having fun when I was doing that. And it was just, as we were talking, there reaches a point where you just kind of embrace all the good and the bad that comes with anything. Any negativity, you have to be able to stand up in the face of situations or people that may not like you. This isn't to say that nobody there dislikes me, because I feel like I was received very well by a lot of people. But when you do something like that, anytime you put yourself out there, you run the risk of people being negative about it. But I just figured I would embrace it all and just kind of take it to another level of just calling myself your favorite home missionary pastor. And that kind of diffused any negativity that happened. But that was one of those things that I think that happened, like, I don't know, Wednesday. It happened after a couple trials where we were working or trying to work the booth and we weren't really getting kind of the traction that we were wanting. But that definitely attracted attention.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had people like Jordan Copeland were back there.
Yeah.
Now, once you say a name, you've got to say them all, right? You've had Rodney Betts and some others back there.
Kenny Goder was there.
Kenny Goder was there. You even had Donald Trump with you. I mean, you had everybody talking about home missions at the LeConte Center. And
I think the thing is to kind of show the human side of how difficult this is when, right now we're talking about the fun sort of parts of this when we get on this podcast, but there's a very difficult part where every day you're out there front facing with and interfacing with your community, and not everybody is friendly faces. Not everybody wants to see you. You have to deal with people that are into false doctrine and people that perceive you as false doctrine or perceive you as a heretic or whatever. And so you have to stand in the face of all that, and so doing this allow people to see the efforts that you're making, and even if they, don't understand everything that you're doing, they can kind of put a human face on it and see, the efforts that you're trying to make.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing it shows is the importance of playing to your strengths.
Right.
Right. So, like, if I tried to do that, it would not have went well.
Right.
Because that is not my natural inclination. That's not my natural personality. It would be forced if I did it, right? And so part of pastoring is, in these scenarios and some, playing to your strengths and understanding who you are, right? So I'm not a guy that's going to get out there and do a lot of the stuff you did, nor am I the guy that's going to be able to come back to the hotel room every night and say, okay, this little bit needs tweaked, that needs tweaked. But that was nice to see because it's very unconventional. And I think a lot of times we get stuck in a conventional box of how we do things. So like even us doing the backpack giveaway or the back to school bash or the other things that we did, it's really not focusing or being in a box. It's trying to think outside the box while still keeping the doctrine.
Right.
But playing to our strengths on things. And so I may not have the biggest strength in terms of outgoing personality and feel comfortable doing some of the stuff you did, but that's because it's not my strength.
Yeah.
You played to your strength. And a lot of times, because we see stuff done a certain way, we think that's how it has to be done.
Right.
Hey, this is how this person pastors a church, so I have to do it the same way. And a lot of times I think that even leads into the conversation where people see a lot of individuals coming up in pastoral families and thinking, hey, to pastor a church, that means, I need to have a long heritage.
Right.
I need to have a dad that's a pastor, a preacher, a minister, or whatever that is. But I know in conversations with you, I know you came from a Christian home, but you didn't come from a pastor's home.
Right.
Neither did I. I'm actually the only one on my side of the family that is in church and attending an apostolic Pentecostal church.
Right.
And so sometimes we get locked in these paradigms, and one of the things that was refreshing to see was you break the paradigm of what was going on there. I think when we go to Summit next year, or maybe the year after that, I think we're going to see more home missionary booths. I think you may have started something new.
That's right. Well, I think you got to be like, I went into it with a plan that I thought was going to work. And I had an idea of how we were going to set this up and go, but I figured out really quickly that was not going to work because there were certain things I miscalculated about the crowd of people and all that. So I had to make a decision. Do I just continue with what I'm doing and probably get very lackluster results, or try to adjust things in real time and be flexible? And I think that's an important part of all of this, is being flexible in the moment and trying new things. I mean, we tried many, many different things before something gained traction. And like you said, I was at home. There was many nights at Summit I didn't even sleep. Okay.
He's not lying. I went to bed a couple of times. We're in the same hotel room. I think I went to bed a couple nights at like 2 o'clock. And Brian is at the computer, and his famous last words before I fall asleep are, There's work to be done. And then I wake up at 6:30, and I think you're just getting to bed.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, it was like I knew I had to strike while the iron's hot, because you're in there and you got all these hundreds of people that and preachers that are there, and you're trying to capture their attention. You're trying to let them see what you're doing, and so you have this limited window of time, and so hey, I'll sleep on the weekend, but right now I have to figure this out. And so we were coming up with. I mean, I've never. I know you write courses for Wilson University, but I wrote like 2 in one night. They were music courses. It was coaching. I was trying to share with, because somebody told me, they said, hey, if you had a coaching program, I would like to buy that. And I was like, oh yeah, well, I have a coaching program. Yeah. And then I went home that night and I fleshed it all out and got it prepared, and really it's not like I was not telling the truth. I did actually have these skills, but I had to figure out this need that people had, and then I matched it to that. All the while I'm trying to bring awareness to the church and showing what we're doing, because ultimately there were people that came in and they bought these things, because all this I'm using to benefit our home missions church, and we'll talk more about that later. But it was a success in that I came home with certain things, some money to buy certain things that I didn't have before, and the perfect opportunity to do that was at Summit, and I had to make the best use of the time.
Yeah, and so I know a couple of the things that you're selling. One of them was kind of a outline and checklist and a little book around doing events.
Right.
And events that people stick with. But the other ones that I was interested in, not necessarily for me, but for individuals in the church that I pastor, is you did have 3 or 4 courses, I think, out there on music. And the reason it interested me is I remember when we first started. When we first started, we had one individual coming from the rock that would play. And then the first convert that we had, his daughters were singing. And so our entire praise team was one individual playing keys and 2 girls that one of them sang at a previous church, the other one didn't, leading worship. And so seeing the progression at the church I pastor in terms of worship has been great. In fact, I think it was this past weekend? Yeah, this past weekend. No, last weekend. Last weekend was the first Sunday that we ever had where instead of preaching, now I'm an advocate for preaching, but instead of preaching, the worship service took over. So much so that we ended up not having preaching. I think the music went for an hour and 15 minutes. Someone got baptized, great move in the altar, and lives were touched. Now, that's the type of stuff that, from a musical perspective, if all they know is 3 songs, you're just going to recycle the last song 45 minutes, or are you going to go back to the first one? Right. And so the importance of music in ministry, and I understand there's situations, we talked about Idaho, right, where they have a particular track and it's running directly through, and that's what they use, and Brother Bertram does a great job up there with it. I believe I was talking with Brother Solano, who's over in, where's he at? Costa Rica, and he had mentioned, like, hey, we've got a CD that we play. I understand you have to do what you have to do, but man, when you can get music in line and you can get talented people doing it, it makes things a lot easier, right? And so talk to us about some of the stuff you're doing music-wise.
Music, to me, I've been a musician a long time, and one of the reasons why I became a musician in the first place in church was because we just simply needed one, and nobody was willing to step up. I had a lot of things I wanted to do as a teenager. I felt a call to preach. I had all these things that I was doing, but at the same time, music, not many people was willing to jump in and do that, but I learned how to do it well enough to where I really began to see the impact that music can make on a worship service. And so, that's kind of led me to where I am now, But after all these years, I've been able to take, I think, put a system together that says if you follow these particular steps, you can become a very competent church musician and not that long of a period of time. There's some different things that you need to do, but you can do that thing because it is a very powerful thing for a church. Imagine getting up and preaching, and you start the church service out, and you walk up there and say, "Welcome everybody, it's good to see you here." And open your Bibles to whatever, and you start preaching. Now that doesn't mean you can't do that, but it's a lot easier when you have taken the time to have music, worship service. That's the atmosphere is set, and people have kind of their hearts are prepared. It's a very, very important part beginning, and then after the preaching of the altar, a very, very important thing.
Well, so I mean, so much so that there were a couple times where, when we first started, the last song going into the preaching sometimes would get dropped.
Yeah.
And you're going up there as the pastor, the one preaching, and you're like, what am I going to do here? Mm-hmm. And so what I thought I was going to, I can't play an instrument. I play the radio pretty well. That's about it. and I can't carry a tune. I don't know when I'm on. I know when other people are on or off, but that doesn't help yourself. And so I actually tried to start taking lessons. Yeah. Because I'm like, listen, when something drops, if the stage isn't quite set, then I need to be able to take it. Yeah. And see if I can adjust it. You know, you see Pastor Young get up there and he can change the atmosphere in the service just by singing a song and doing that. Well, exactly. I'm not that, and evidently God doesn't think I have the talent to do that, because I started my first lesson, I was doing them with a James Small, and as soon as we finished the first one, a house opened up in Turlock to move down, and I had no more lessons. And so evidently God did not want me singing, or he knew that if I attempted to, I would run more people out of the church than would stay. Yeah. And so music is a huge part. And one of the things that I'm very interested in, maybe you can talk about all the different things you're doing. Mm-hmm. We just recently, I think we discussed it on the last podcast or an earlier one, but we just recently, miraculous act of God, now have a Hammond C3 and a Leslie sitting in the church. Yeah. And someone asked me, well, do you have anybody that knows how to play it? I said, no. I said, I just figured I needed one for when I get someone that knows how to play it. Exactly. And I've got a young gentleman in the church that's like 12 years old. When he heard I was looking for a B3 or a C3 with a Leslie, he's like, I'm going to learn how to play it. Yeah. And there's a couple others that want to learn how to play it. But one of the offerings that I saw on your table was around organs. Right. So what was the name of that course?
Okay, so that was called the Hammond Organ Mastery Series. You know, I'm a Hammond organ guy. And let me just briefly stop here to tell you that you can learn to sing, okay? So what you just need to do is you need to get in a situation where you're doing it all the time on a regular basis. Because I've seen people at our church, at the Rock Church, Elk Grove, who are 20 years old, 18, 19, 20 years old, and they've never sang in their life, but they just get put in a situation where they're forced to do it all the time. And over time, they were singing in the choir or whatever, they're singing on a weekly basis, and maybe they was with a friend group that required them to do that. Over time, they got better. And this was after, they're 20 years old. A lot of times, people feel like they're, they can't learn things after a certain day.
So I need a choir that can drown me out first, and then as I get better.
Right. Well, there's that. But there's the same thing with musicians itself. People, the successful people that train, and I'm saying this right now because I want you to buy my course. So, no, but the people that do really well, it's, you go and if I teach lessons to somebody, they are going to learn a little bit, right? But the greatest teacher is experience. Yeah. The greatest teacher is being put in a situation where you have to do this every week. And so my course, what I teach them is, this is going to be good and you're going to do great, but what you need to do is get into a weekly ministry opportunity where you have to do something on a regular basis, whether it's the nursing home, the jail ministry, college ministry, youth ministry, whatever that is. If you can't do it at your church, figure out a way to do that, because if you will dedicate that one time of the week where you're forced to learn, after a year's worth of time, you will become a competent musician. And I think the same thing would happen with you with your singing. Now, regarding the Hammond organ thing, I love the Hammond organ. Okay, that was one of the things because I realized as a young musician how powerful the Hammond organ, Leslie kind of thing. If you can get one, how powerful that is on an apostolic service when you're doing
especially
it.
in the preaching, little
Exactly,
gravy.
exactly. But that's not to say that replaces the anointing. I'm not saying that the organ is the anointing or anything like that. But it does. There's just certain things, the way that Don Leslie and Lauren Hammonds figured this thing out back in the 1930s. They really did a good job of creating the right type of sound.
So what were their names again?
There was Lawrence Hammond was the originator, and a guy named Don Leslie. He died in like 2004.
I told you we're learning stuff on the podcast all the time.
That's right.
I'm writing that note down.
That's right. Don Leslie. Yeah, you'll. I mean, if you
never realized the Hammond was named after a person or the Leslie.
Yeah,
never knew that.
Yeah, amazing. But anyway, I have some people. I love the organ. I teach the organ. I play the organ on a regular basis on Sunday nights. Usually, I'm, some of the things about how to back up, play backup music, all that for the preacher. But I also have some helpers with me that are remarkably good. That are helping me with that. That's Brother Ricky Olvera and Jordan Dominguez. These guys are really good. They're younger than I. And there's a new generation of musicians are really, really good. And it's a really, really bright future. So if you're interested in that, you can go to serviceready.co, and it's on there. You can sign up for that, and it'll be a great thing. All the proceeds go to home missions. So serviceready.co. You can also go to rockgive.com and see the same thing as there as well. Go ahead.
All right. So in addition to the organ, what other classes are on there? And is the organ one, is that one that's kind of like asynchronous in that it's recorded, or is that kind of real-time live?
Good. So it is a little bit of a split there. So we have some information in there that you can download some videos about introductions to the organ, and then we kind of do an assessment. It's sort of a coaching program where we kind of figure out where you're at, what it is that you need, and then just try to walk you through this, over a period of months where you're going to check in with our teacher and our coach and figure out where it is that you're going and get there. The thing about teaching, that this is just how I think about it. My goal is to give someone the tools and the inspiration and the pathway to be able to do something, and then empower them to do this over time. And then we check back in with each other and try to provide some accountability there to help you get to where it is that you're exactly going. Because there's a lot of different people have different goals for why they do what they do. If you're a church musician and you want this in your church and you want to be able to back up the preacher, that's a particular goal. There's other people that want to learn how to do hymns and that old kind of sound, that is reminiscent in Pentecost, a longer time ago. That's what they want. So they'll do that. There's other people that want to do transitions and all that. All of this is very, very important, but we have to figure out what your goals are. So there's the Hammond organ one. There's a keyboard mastery series. And then there's one on Ableton Live. If you don't have any musicians in your church, Ableton Live empowers you to be able to have a really full sounding music team without any musicians, or maybe if you only have one musician, you can really, really scale your music well with Ableton Live.
So Ableton Live was actually one of the tools I don't know how to use. I just know about it, that I had talked to Brother Bertram in Idaho about. And I was like, hey, if you use Ableton Live, you could, instead of singing the song all the way through, and the CD come to a stop or whatever it is, you can hotkey some stuff, go back into verses, go back into chorus,
that's good.
All of that stuff. But so that really helps too. And I believe you and I had a conversation before. I think it's one of your family members leads worship, and there's no musicians there. And so legitimately the entire worship set from band perspective is being ran from Ableton Live.
Right.
And so when you talk about a powerful tool for home missions church,
unbelievable.
Ableton Live, you don't have a drummer, no worries.
That's
Cue
right.
it in, right?
And you can do it in a way that sounds really good. I think a lot of times people, when they think about this, they think about soundtracks kind of playing in the background. And you don't want to have that kind of feeling where it's like, let's start the soundtrack, you push the play, and the person sings, and it feels very stilted and it just doesn't feel right. But like when you do it with Ableton Live, you're able to produce this live sort of sound that really feels like there's musicians in the building. So that's good.
And Ableton is a somewhat complex program, right?
Right.
So having someone walk you through that,
Yeah.
important. And want to kind of end on this. You touched on one thing in terms of training and teaching musicians and finding out what their goal is. How important? So I know, like my oldest daughter wants to play the piano. My middle-aged daughter wants to play the drums, and Ellie's just kind of Ellie, and she does what she does, right?
Yeah.
She just makes noise. She makes a joyful noise. But when my wife and I were discussing about, there's a couple places in Turlock where we could take them to learn how to play the keyboard, but my hesitation and what I was talking to my wife about was, well, if Isabella wants to play the keyboard, I'd rather get her trained by someone that is an apostolic that understands the keyboard for multiple reasons. One is she's going to learn to play the songs that are actually going to be utilized.
Right.
The second part is that a keyboard player that isn't apostolic can't teach you how to follow the Holy Ghost and give direction in there. And so what is the importance to you of instruction on instruments if you have the opportunity to use someone that's apostolic
Okay, so
versus not?
For absolutely, because apostolics, we understand how we do church. There is a unique perspective, by way in which apostolics engage our constituency, the way that we worship. All of that is very unique, and so it's very important to get around those types of people that understand that, because there's certain things that are not taught very well, but they're not taught, but they're caught.
Yeah.
Just by being around them, you get better. I think one of my first teachers was a guy by the name of Steve Mead, and he is related to Brother Pastor Johnny Walker, and he was my first teacher, and really he was not a good teacher. He was not good. You'll find that most musicians, the good musicians, are not good teachers. They're excellent at playing. And so what they do is they provide inspiration. They provide a vision for you to see it done on a level that you've never seen before, and just something for you to aspire to. And that is worth its weight in gold when it comes to you becoming a good church apostolic musician. And so getting around apostolics, good church musicians that understand that, is a very key part of your development as a musician, because there are people, you can learn a lot as classical music. I'm not against classically trained people learning by note. There's a lot of value in that, and so there's a lot of things about that I wish that I knew. But there's a certain way in which anybody can play songs. You can learn to play songs in any, you go to some teacher locally here, you could probably learn how to play a lot of modern gospel music. But there's a way in which you engage with service and flowing, and the way that you prepare your heart for service, or the way that you prepare yourself to flow in the Spirit as you're playing, and just let yourself express yourself, and you're not going by a sheet anymore. You're going by what you feel in the Holy Ghost. That is something that can't be taught. It has to be caught, and it's done by getting around those that are good and that know how to do it.
So since apostolic training is so important, why don't you tell them again where they can go to access your courses?
Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit like I did in Summit. So this is your favorite missionary pastor talking right now. You can go to serviceready.co. I tried to get the .com, but that's already taken. But Service Ready is our music company. Basically, we prepare musicians for service in the kingdom. So it's called serviceready.co. You can go there. And then we have some other things at rockgive.com, which is some courses that we have that are geared toward our home missions church. And there's also givesierras.com. You can go on and see our vision for 2026 and all the things that we're going to do. So looking forward to meeting all of you. If you go to serviceready.co, I have a free chord book on there that you can download, and I have a course that's running right now. In fact, we're going to extend it for 48 hours because there's a lot of people that couldn't get in. But for the next 48 hours, we're going to let people to get in that if you'd like to do that. So serviceready.co.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of All Things Apostolic. We look forward to seeing you next week.